أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. بسم الله. الحمد لله. We are gathered in the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the 19th day of Ramadan, and we are extremely close and on the verge of the final 10 days and 10 nights for the beloved month of Ramadan. So may Allah Almighty enable us all to truly make the most of these remaining days and nights and the blessed days and nights of Ramadan. Yesterday we discussed the Battle of Badr, and also we discussed the various aspects for the life of Medina, the internal disputes that were taking place between the Meccans and also the people of Medina, the problems that the Jews had with the Muslims, and also the various other social aspects, economical aspects of the Muslims in the city of Medina, and how the Prophet ﷺ, being a very astute person that he was, and being always ready to resolve a situation, he realized all of these internal problems, and then he found a solution to them all. So the Prophet ﷺ was always looking for solutions, and he was very, very creative with his mind. And we learned various lessons yesterday that we need to be creative as well. We need to be innovative. We need to try different ways and methods and explore them to further the message of Islam, to protect Islam, and also to make sure that we are fulfilling our role, which is to come here and to spread the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We also learned that yesterday the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala and the Sahaba, they did not go out for war. So they're not bloodthirsty, they're not there to go to kill with the intention of killing. They were going there to intercept the caravan which had their own property. And along the way we know that the Muslims, they encountered the Quraysh, they were only in a few numbers, so 313 versus 1,000. However, they were also prepared for the advent of war, because the Prophet was extremely meticulous in all of the circumstances that the Muslims would come across. So he prepared them for also the advent of war. And even in this battle, there was no destruction. The Prophet did not mutilate any of their bodies, neither did he order them to behave in such a manner. They were only there to defend themselves and not there to kill or to cause havoc and chaos or destruction or to cause terror in the life of any other person. So what I reminded you yesterday is that the context of the verses of jihad and the context of the ahadith of jihad must always be kept in mind. You don't put them out of context and say, Islam always telling you to go on jihad, Islam, the Quran is telling you to do this or to do that. There's none of these things. You have to look at the context and the scenario and the situation and the background that the Muslims found themselves in and why they did what they did in that particular situation and circumstance. So all of us as well in our lifetime, we will be told to do certain things at certain times, but then you shouldn't take that out of context and say, my mom told me to do this, and then she probably told me to do it at a particular time, at a particular place, and not in front of all the other people. So there's always a context to everything in life. So the Muslims, they finally come back from the Battle of Badr, and they return to Medina Munawwara, and the Prophet ﷺ, before leaving the battlefield, he addresses and he speaks to the mushriks, those people that were killed, the people from Makkah who were there opposed to the message of Islam, and he directly addressed them, he spoke to them. And the Sahaba, they were quite perplexed and they were confused that these are dead people. The bodies, they do not speak, they do not talk, they cannot answer. So why is the Prophet ﷺ talking to them and addressing them? And the Prophet ﷺ, he answered and he said that these people, although they are dead, they can hear me better than you can hear me. And this was the first time time the Muslims realize that there is something of the hereafter. The life doesn't just finish once a person dies, but the life continues after that in a different form and a different manner, which is beyond our understanding and comprehension. The Prophet ﷺ said that they can hear me. The only difference is that you can reply and they cannot reply. And this is the difference between those who are alive and those who are dead. Just because you are dead and no longer physically here in this dunya doesn't mean that you can't hear the footsteps of those people who come to your grave. You can, because this is mentioned in that hadith. It doesn't mean that those people who come to your grave and talk to you, speak to you, and read the Quran, you can hear them, you can understand what they are saying, but the only thing is that you cannot reply. So therefore it's important for us to remember those people who have passed away, especially our family members, our parents, our brothers and sisters and cousins, and all of the Muslim Ummah. And when the opportunity does come, we should always visit them, because the Prophet ﷺ visited the Shuhada of Badr. Those 14 Muslims that passed away in the Battle of Badr, the Prophet ﷺ on a regular basis, and in some narrations on a daily basis, would go past their graves and he would go to them and give his salam to them and say, receive us and we will be following you shortly as well. So you should go there, recite the Quran upon them as well, and send salam upon them as well. So just because the physical life finishes doesn't mean the spiritual life has ended. That's just the beginning of a new realm, a new journey for the spiritual life. And therefore we must always try to remember those people who have passed away and given their life in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As for the prisoners of war, I mentioned to you yesterday there were 70 prisoners of war from the Battle of Badr. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as in all circumstances, he sat down with the Sahaba Ikram and listened to them and asked them for their opinions. So the Prophet ﷺ never, on the majority of the occasions, made unilateral decisions. The only time he made a unilateral decision when the command was directly from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the only time he would say, this is what you're doing, that's it. However, in all of the circumstances, he would always take the mashwara, take the opinions of the Sahaba Ikram. And this is important for us to consider and understand as well. Just because you may be the father, just because you may be the husband, just because you may be the head of the household doesn't mean that you have the complete right and the complete authority to make all the decisions which are necessary or best for you and your family. You should always have a mashwara, a consultation with your wife, consultation with your children, consultation with all of those people that will be affected by your decision. So the Prophet ﷺ, he's the commander-in-chief, he's the statesman, he's the head of the city of Medina. He could have made the decision that this is what we're going to do with the prisoners of war, but he didn't. He sat down with the Sahaba Ikram and asked them for their opinions on how we should deal with them. Some Sahaba Ikram, they said we should take ransom money from them, that they can pay a certain amount of money and then we will free them. And that money will go back into our community and our society for the losses that we have earned. And the other Sahaba Ikram, like Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab, who was much more staunch and harsh, he said, no, we should kill them, we should cut their heads off. The Prophet inclined more towards the opinion of Abu Bakr and inclined towards the majority opinion. And the majority opinion was that they purchase their freedom or they teach the Sahaba Ikram, or those people who are illiterate, they teach them something in terms of their knowledge. They teach them how to read, they teach them how to write. So if they are able to do this, i.e. transfer over their skills, then this is an equivalent to the monetary value as well. And this teaches us the importance of knowledge and the importance of skill as well. Don't just think that money is everything. With money you will have this, you will have that. But education is more powerful than money. Money will come and money will go, but knowledge will always stay with you. Your skills will always remain with you, and that is very, very important for you to understand. We're running after dunya all the time because we're running after money. However, the true thing is to run after those skills that will stay with you as long as you are alive. And this is what the majority of those prisoners of war did, is that they taught the Sahaba Ikram how to read and how to write. And then when you teach a person how to read and write, then you empower them and you strengthen them. And this goes back to all of the things that the Prophet ﷺ was trying to achieve, not just change the people and their heart and their belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but change the state of their life, how they live, how strong they are, how powerful they are, how empowered they are, how much knowledge they have, how many skills they have, in the economy, in society, in culture, all of these things. Prophet ﷺ wanted to strengthen the Muslims and their control as well. This is vital as well for us all, that if we want to become successful, success is not only going to be through your religious life, it has to be combined with your social, with your financial, with the economic, all of these aspects have to be combined, and then you find that with your tawakkul and reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you will have more success in your dunya as well. So make sure that all of us, you have a balance in your life and seek not just the wealth of this dunya, but seek the knowledge of this dunya as well, which is more important to us. So they're back into Medina and they move on with their life, they carry on. So originally when they went to Medina, they didn't go for war, they didn't go for anything, they just wanted to get away from the persecution, they wanted to get away from all of that was happening in Makkah and live a life of peace, live a life where they could be Muslims and worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without any disturbances. And then the weather happened because of what the Quraysh instigated and not what the Muslims instigated. And similarly, now the Prophet ﷺ has returned to Medina and everybody gets back to the way of life. So Islam is not always about jihad, war, fighting. No. The majority of your life is about peace. You only do jihad and do that struggle when you need to defend yourself and you need to defend the message of Islam and all the circumstances. And not just for pleasure or for seeking of glory or for wealth, anything like that. So the majority of your life must be in peace the way the Prophet ﷺ taught us. So the Sahaba they're back into Medina and they're back into their norms of life. So they're trading, they're marrying, they're traveling, they're doing everything that normal human beings do. And this is what the Prophet ﷺ also does, that he marries off his daughter, Sayyidah Fatima radiallahu ta'ala anha. She's married off to Sayyidina Ali radiallahu ta'ala anha. Prophet ﷺ chooses in her many suitors, because this was a rishta, a relationship that was divinely ordained by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Prophet ﷺ sold off some of the possessions of Sayyidina Ali, and then with that he gave the mahar. Obviously he had 480 dirhams which was given to Sayyidah Fatima as the mahar for her wedding. The walima also took place as well. And the Prophet ﷺ did a dua for both of his children, because Sayyidina Ali was like a son to the Prophet ﷺ, because he lived with him from a young age. And Sayyidah Fatima was the most beloved daughter of the Prophet ﷺ, and they had a very intimate connection. So the Prophet ﷺ did whatever he could within his capacity, and he moved on with them, and carry on, marry, have children, get on with your life. So those people who say that Islam's purpose is something else, which is to cause fitna and fasad and corruption and war and anarchy and terrorism, it's not. Islam is about coexisting, Islam is about communication, engagement, and living your life in a peaceful manner, living your life in a way which is positive, and you're contributing to society. This is what the Muslims have done for the 13 years in Makkah. This is what they are trying to do in the 3 years of Medina as well. They're trying to just get on, live in peace, and allow other people to live in peace as well. However, because of the Quraysh, they were defeated in the Battle of Badr, they wanted revenge. So they were looking and seeking vengeance from the Muslims, that so many of our people have been killed, and we want revenge from the Muslims. But it wasn't just about revenge, this was just one of the reasons. The real reason why the Quraysh wanted to attack the Muslims again after the Battle of Badr, because the Battle of Badr took place in the 2nd year, so they wanted to attack the Muslims again, and the real reason for their attack was because this message of Islam was getting stronger. More and more tribes were listening that the Muslims have become triumphant, they won over the Quraysh, and they're small in number, but the message is strong and their faith is strong. So the message was spreading more and more, and the Quraysh, they realized that their power was diminishing, their control was diminishing, and slowly their wealth would diminish as well, and people would be redirected to the Prophet ﷺ. So the real reason was to protect their own financial interests. This was the main reason for why they waged the second war with the Muslims, and why they wanted to have a battle with the Prophet ﷺ, to prevent any loss of income, to prevent any loss of power, of wealth, or control, anything like that. This was the reason behind the Quraysh people getting together and trying to attack the Prophet ﷺ. And so they were fighting for the dunya, however the Muslims, they were fighting for the akhirah, they were fighting for the truth. They were fighting for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but rather defending for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what did the Quraysh do in the 3rd year after Hijrah? Because remember now, because Prophet has migrated, we changed the years not into Nabuwa years, but we changed them into Hijrah years. The 1st year of Hijrah, the second year of Hijrah, and the third year of Hijrah. So the second year of Hijrah, it was the Battle of Badr, and in the third year of Hijrah, it is the Battle of Uhud, where the Quraysh people, they regroup. So 3,000 people, they collect. The Quraysh people in the Battle of Badr, they had roughly between 7 to 1,000 people, 700 to 1,000 people, and the Muslims only had 313. And in this battle, in the Battle of Uhud, they have over 3,000 people, because they really want to destroy the Muslim, destroy the message of Islam, and prevent the Muslims from ever rising again, or the message of Islam from spreading in any way or form. So the Prophet, this is their intention and this is their plan. And the Prophet ﷺ has a dream, and he has a beautiful dream. And in the dream, he sees that he is wearing a shield. He's wearing a shield, and the shield is very, very strong. And also he has a sword, but that sword is broken. And he also sees that some cows are being slaughtered. So for any other person, if you have a dream where you see a shield, you have a sword, and the sword is broken, and you have some cows, and those cows are being slaughtered, you wouldn't understand anything from that particular dream. But the Prophet ﷺ, he understood the interpretations of dream, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had blessed him with that knowledge. Just the way Yusuf was given the interpretation of the dreams by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet ﷺ understood from this that the shield, and the strong shield, was meant to signify the strength of Medina, that this was the stronghold, this was the fortress, this was the castle of the Muslims, and this is where they would find protection and shelter, and this is where they needed to be. So this is how he interpreted by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the broken sword, it signified that some of the relatives of the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala, those who were very close to the Prophet ﷺ, would be martyred, because the sword is a very, very close thing to you, because you hold it in your hand, it's very intimate with you, it's an extension of your arm, is it not? Similarly, the Prophet realized that because of the sword being broken, some of his relatives were to become martyrs in the way of Islam. And the cows that he saw that were being slaughtered, he understood that the Sahaba Ikram would be martyred in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as they were defending the message of Islam. So this is what he understood, that he had to keep and find shelter in the city of Medina, and then he had to try to defend Islam, because something was coming, a war was coming, and this is the message that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was given the Prophet ﷺ. However, we know that the dream which comes to a Nabi, the dream that comes to a Nabi is none other than from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A dream cannot be inserted by a shaitan or by a person's own desires onto a prophet. The dream comes directly from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, in the life of every single one of us, the dream can come from our own desires, from our interactions with people and community, and also from the waswas of shaitan. But this dream was only from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, although the Prophet ﷺ knows, understands, and realizes that this is imminent, this is about to happen, he doesn't take the unilateral decision. He still goes to the Sahaba Ikram and he consults them. He goes to them and he explains that something is happening, there is a threat which is imminent, it's about to come to the Muslims, and what do you suggest? So he again uses democracy, he again uses the consultation and sits down with them. And the young Sahaba Ikram, because they have Josh, because they have strength and youth on their side, they say that we should go out and we should find the Quraysh wherever they are, along the route, inside Makkah, outside Makkah, wherever they may be, we should take the fight to them. Because this was obviously Jawani and the Josh, and this is how they were receiving the situation. However, those people who are more elderly in their age, who have more wisdom, more hikmah, and more experience as well, they said it is better that we stay within Medina, because Medina, as you know, those people who have gone to Medina, it is protected from both sides. All sides is protected. There's only one entrance into Medina, because it's protected by mountains on the other side, so it's like a U-shape. It's protected by mountains on all sides, and only one entrance into Medina. So the elders, they understood that it's better for us to stay in Medina, and we can protect ourselves, because it's a better shield, and it's a fortress, and it's like a castle for us. So this is the true suggestion that took place. The young people are saying we take the war to them, and the elderly people are saying we should remain within our boundaries in the city of Medina, and we can protect ourselves in a better way. So the Prophet ﷺ, up until this time, hasn't shared the dream with them, because he wants to seek their consultation, he wants to seek their mashwara and see what they say, and take their opinion, and then based on the majority opinion, he wants to go and do the right thing. The Prophet could have ordered them that this is what we're doing, this is my understanding, this is what we should do.
And had it failed, then they would have put all the blame on the Prophet ﷺ, that it's your fault. Just like your parents may say something to you, and one of the examples is that they say, and even though they don't consult you, they don't ask you, they tell you, and then you end up doing it, when it does go wrong, then the first person that you blame is not yourself, that you didn't make it work, you don't blame your wife. The first person you blame is your parents, because they made the decision without your consultation, without debating, without all of these things taken into consideration. So this is exactly what the Sahaba would have done as well. They would have put all of the blame on the Prophet ﷺ, that it was your command, your order, we went out and then we got defeated because of you. Because it was the majority opinion, everybody was consulted, therefore the blame was on everybody's shoulder. The responsibility and the success of all of this was on the shoulder of every single person. That's why I urge the parents that whenever you're about to make a life-changing decision, don't make it independently. Sit down with your wife, sit down with your children, consult with them, talk to them, because this is how the Prophet ﷺ did. On his social activities, on his religious activities, they were always done by mutual consultation. And this is what we lack. We lack communication between our parents and ourselves. We do what we want, and the parents do what they want. And then when they want us to do a particular thing, they just tell you this is the only way or the highway. And then something has to give. You either leave or they either break away from us. So the Prophet ﷺ is teaching us a very, very important lesson of consultation, of shura, of communication. And when you do this, then especially for such a monumental task that was about to take place, then the responsibility was on the shoulders of all of the Muslims. The success was on all of them, and they were all sharing the success, as well as the loss was on all of their shoulders as well. So the Prophet ﷺ, he goes with the majority opinion, and not just unilaterally makes a decision. So please, brothers and sisters, whenever there's a life-changing situation, listen to your friends, listen to your family, take mashwara, take consultation before you make a decision. Otherwise, it will come back and bite you in, you know where. So you have to be very, very careful with the decisions that you make in your life, because you will be ultimately be responsible for that as well. So the Prophet ﷺ, he values the importance of counsel. He values the importance of consultation, of democracy, and he respects the majority opinion, and he goes with that. Later on, after they have concluded that this is the opinion they will take, that they will remain within the boundaries of Medina, this is how they will defend Islam and the city of Medina. Other Muslims come and they say, well, we will go with your other opinion, and we should go with your other opinion, we should go, out and we should find them. But the Prophet ﷺ, he rejects them and he says, no, this is the majority opinion, this is what everybody has voted for, this is what everybody has understood to be the right decision, and we will go with this. So once you have taken the decision to follow the majority of the people, just because somebody may come and sway you or tempt you in a particular way, you shouldn't go with that, because it goes with your desire. You should go with the majority opinion. And this is what the Prophet ﷺ has chosen to do. The Sahaba Ikram are saying, look, we should do this, it's better, it'll be more beneficial. But the Prophet ﷺ, whilst he respects their opinion, he goes, no, this is the majority opinion. And that's the whole purpose of democracy, that's the whole purpose of consultation, not to will go with you and then otherwise you do whatever you want to do. No, you have to follow through with your consultation and the way the Prophet ﷺ did. So the Sahaba Ikram, they are preparing, and the Prophet ﷺ has ordered them to prepare for the advent of the war. Not to go to war, but to defend Islam, because the Quraysh are coming to them, and they are not going to the Quraysh, just like in the Battle of Uhud. They didn't go for the purpose of the war, they went for the purpose of intercepting the caravan. However, they were confronted with the people of Quraysh, and the war to take place. So the Muslims, they have 1,000 people, 1,000 Muslims, they are ready, who are able, who are strong, who are capable of going into war, and they prepare. However, from the 1,000 Muslims that are ready, 300 of them were hypocrites. And this is important to understand as well, that many people who say, and they say, yeah, we'll be with you and we'll support you in everything. When the time does come and you need to bite the bullet, you will see who are on the such, who are on haq, who is really those people who are supporting you, and who are those people who run away from the situation. Your nearest and dearest of friends may be with you as long as you have money, as long as you have wealth, as long as you have a nice car, and you are walking with certain people. But as soon as all of that goes, then they leave your side as well. So these hypocrites who were there, they were saying yes, we're with the Muslims. They were only with the Muslims because they had the protection from the Muslims. They were benefiting from the Muslims in terms of their business and everything else. However, when the time came for them to defend Islam, them to stand shoulder to shoulder with the Muslims, The three hypocrites, they ran away. And they used an excuse, Muhammad, he has listened to the majority of the people, he hasn't listened to us, and we don't appreciate what he is doing, and therefore we're denying his support, and we're not going to support him. But the reality was they were hypocrites. They were never there for the right reasons. They were never there to protect Islam. They were never there to defend the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals various verses at this moment, and He mentions that at that time there were two groups, and one group said that we were not going to support you, and they assumed that by them retracting their support that you would become unsuccessful. However, you must always believe and believe in and have reliance upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when you have sincerely done consultation with your family and with your friends for a particular issue, and you're doing it for the right reasons, then you should believe and rely upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala after preparing to the best of your ability. Prepare to the best of your ability, and not think that just because I don't have his support, I can no longer carry on with this project or with this endeavor. Rely upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the battle takes place just in front of the Mount of Uhud, and the Mount of Uhud is very, very well known in the Islamic tradition. The Mount of Uhud was not a rock, was not a piece of rock, not just a mountain which he could not understand or comprehend. He had feelings. And the Prophet ﷺ mentioned these feelings that the Mount of Uhud, it loves us and we love it as well. This is the expression the Prophet ﷺ shared with us, that the mountain of Uhud, which is to us just a rock, it had feelings and it loved the Prophet ﷺ. And this mountain of Uhud is the only mountain which will be in the gardens of paradise as well, because it loved the Prophet ﷺ. And other situations, you will remember once the Prophet ﷺ was standing on the Mount of Uhud, and he was with Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu ta'ala, and he was with Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab, and he was with Sayyidina Usman ibn Affan. He was with all of these people, and due to the love of the Prophet ﷺ, the mountain of Uhud started swaying. And you might think, wait a minute, a mountain swaying is like an earthquake, everything would crumble and everything. But out of joy, out of happiness that today my beloved has come, the mountain was overwhelmed by the Prophet ﷺ, and by the touch of the Prophet ﷺ, it started shaking and shivering in joy and happiness. And the Prophet ﷺ then ordered the mountain that stop shaking, stop moving, because a Prophet is above you. I am the messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I am standing above you, and there is a Siddiq above you as well, related to Abu Bakr Siddiq. And there are two shuhada, Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab and Sayyidina Usman ibn Affan. Therefore, calm down, because he was moving out of joy and out of passion of the Prophet. So the mountain, just don't assume that everything in this dunya is inanimate. Those things that we think that this is a brick, this is land, this is this is that. Everything which has been created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, everything which is natural and has been created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has an existence. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran, وَلَكِنْ لَا تَفْقَهُونَ تَسْبِيحَهُمْ. Everything which is alive and is doing the praise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but you do not understand their praise. You do not understand their language, you do not understand the form of their praise as well. However, the Prophet ﷺ, he was given that understanding and that knowledge, and that's why he was addressing the mountain of Uhud, and the mountain of Uhud was showing his love and joy, expressing his passion towards the Prophet ﷺ. So the battlefield essentially was in front of the mountain of Uhud. So this is why it's called the Battle of Uhud, where the battle actually took place. And as with every single circumstance, the Prophet ﷺ, as well as relying upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he planned for every single scenario and situation and eventuality. Just like we discussed yesterday for the Battle of Badr, they never went out for the Battle of Badr, they went out to intercept the caravan. However, they knew that the Quraysh people were coming, and they had to also have a battle plan ready as well. And then we saw how the Prophet initially he was behind the wells, and then he took the consultation of the Sahaba Ikram, and then he went in front of the wells as well. And then how he changed the attack as well, by having one line of people who were at the front and the archers behind. So the Prophet would continuously use different ways and methods to propagate Islam and also to defend Islam as well. And this is what we learn as well, that the Prophet Islam, as well as relying on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he's planning for every single thing. So he knew the tactics of the Quraysh, he knew what they would do and how they would break up, because it was a large battlefield. The Prophet knew that they would flank out onto the right, they would flank out onto the left. So So the Prophet ﷺ, he looked at the terrain, he looked at the battlefield, and he realized this is where we need to position our Muslims, this is how we need to defend, this is how we need to attack. All of these things the Prophet ﷺ was strategically planning on a military level, this is how we need to behave. So similarly in your life as well, you need to plan strategically on how you want success in your business, how you want success. You need to look at the battlefield that you're in, which is this dunya. Look at your opponents, look at your enemies. I'm not just talking about jihad, I'm talking about the competition that you have in life, at home, outside, in the community, wherever you may be. This is a challenge as well for you. This is a struggle for you as well. And you need to assess all of these things, the environment that you're in, the situation that you're in, and then realize what is the best way forward. And this is what the Prophet ﷺ is doing. So what he does, the majority of the Muslims are on the battlefield, and then in front of the mountain of Uhud there is a small mountain as well. And the Prophet ﷺ places 50 archers on the mountain, on this mountain in front of the mountain of Uhud, and he gives them very, very clear instructions. Very, very clear instruction that you must not, no matter what, if we are successful, if we are triumphant, and you see us taking the spoils of war, no matter what happens, you stay on this mountain. And if you see us being mutilated, being killed, and being doomed, no matter what happens, you will still stay on this mountain. So this was the order of the Prophet ﷺ, because he recognized the weak points. Remember, he's assessing the situation, and he realized that we are strong on this fold, we are strong in this area. The only weak point is this particular weak point. And the Prophet ﷺ therefore gave this very, very strict instruction to make sure that no matter what happens, you do not allow this vulnerability to be, to be used by the non-Muslims at that time. So similarly, we need to look at ourselves in this country, especially in this community, wherever we may be living, understand who you are, understand your strengths, what you can do, where your power is, where your ability is, where your speciality is. All of these things, you need to understand them and need to improve on your strengths. Just like the Sahaba in Medina, they were learning to empower themselves through trade, learning new skills, learning new knowledge, and all of these things, empowering themselves socially, financially, economically, and then religiously strengthening themselves as well. So similarly, strengthen yourselves, improve on your skills, whatever you may have, and at the same time, find out what your weaknesses are. Prophet ﷺ highlighted this weakness. This is the only weakness that we have. You have firm iman in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You are not afraid of dying. You're not afraid of fighting. All of these things, and you are strong. So realize that. But the only weakness that we have is this particular mountain, and this is where we can be attacked from if they come from behind us. So therefore, no matter what happens, stay here in this position, whether we win or whether we lose. Stay here, and this is where you need to protect the Muslims. So 700 Muslims versus 3,000 Muslims. And this is the situation that is taking place. So the Muslims are there in the battlefield, and the battle commences. And in the first half an hour or so, the Muslims are overcoming the people of Makkah. So even though there's only 700 versus 3,000, they are still becoming successful, and they're overpowering the people of Makkah. And the Muslims who are on the mountain at that time, i.e. the archers, they see this and they become greedy. They see this and they become greedy, and they start thinking, yes, we have won, yes, we have become successful. And 40 of the archers from the 50, they leave their position. They leave that strategic position, they leave that position which is vulnerable for the Muslims, they leave that and they start going towards the spoils of the war. And this is another thing that we need to realize as well, that you always need to make sure that your weaknesses are covered, then you strengthen your weakness, and then you don't allow any vulnerability in your life, in your social life, in your financial life, in your religious life, in your personal life as well. And these 40 archers, they leave the mountain and they come and they try to join in, but this is the opportunity that the non-Muslims were looking for. Khalid ibn Walid at that time, he wasn't a Muslim, and he immediately saw this weakness. He immediately saw this weakness. At the beginning, he realized that, wait a minute, they've got archers there, and they're here, we can't win, and they're trying their best, but they couldn't overcome the Muslim. But as soon as he saw this weakness, and the archers have come down, and then he went around that mountain, and it's 23 kilometers. 23 kilometers, but he realized that by going around, even though it's 23 kilometers, we can attack them from behind and we can overcome them. So the 40 archers that were left, there was only 10 archers left on that mountain, and this is that weakness that they had. So I remind you as well that the positions that you have in society, the rank that you have in your life as well, whatever you may have in terms of the position that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you, don't allow it to become weak. Don't leave it for the sake of the dunya, don't leave it for the sake of pleasure, don't leave it for the sake of monetary value. like that. If you have been positioned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a particular city, in a particular area, in a particular position in your company, at your workplace, in your community, whatever position that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you, that is a position of strength for you to make yourself better, to improve the image of Islam and to strengthen Islam. But as soon as you become weak and you leave that position, then you will find other people coming and attacking you, and they will overcome you, and then you will have nothing. And this is what happens, that the Muslims, they left that position and just for the sake of the spoils of war, and as a result of that, Khalid bin Walid came with many non-Muslims at that time around that mountain, and they attacked Muslims from behind. He saw that weakness and he exploited that weakness, and he attacked Muslims from behind. And at the beginning, when Muslims were triumphant, now they were losing, and many Muslims were being martyred. And this is when the Quraysh, they started killing more and more people. So they killed those 40 archers, and they killed many Sahaba Ikram as well, and other Sahaba Ikram, because they were being attacked from the front as well as from behind. They started running away from the battlefield as well. And the remaining 10 people that were on that mountain, they fought valiantly, but even they were killed as well. They became shuhada as well. So this is how people will look towards your weaknesses, and they will use that and they will exploit that for their benefit. And it's important for us to reflect upon our strengths as well as our weaknesses, and improve our strengths and remove the weaknesses that we have in our life. And that doesn't mean just our religious weakness, our spiritual weaknesses, our social, our financial, our economic, every single facet of our life. We have pros and we have cons, and we have more cons than we have pros in this community and in this society. We need to address them, realize them, and strengthen our position in our society, and be firm. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent us here into this country. He sent us here for a reason. We can still be in Pakistan, we could still be in Afghanistan, we could be in any part of the world if Allah Ta'ala has positioned us here. Because He has, if you think about it in a way, it's part of the plan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just the way the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam positioned the Muslim on that mountain, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has positioned you in this country, in this city, in this town. You have a responsibility to protect your deen, to protect yourself, strengthen the deen, strengthen the message, and remove any vulnerabilities, any weaknesses, and do not allow Islam to be attacked from behind or from the front, because you are the person who needs to be there defending Islam and remaining firm in your position. When you become weak, then everybody else will be able to go overwhelming Islam as well, just the way it happened on that day as well. So this is what happened. The Muslims, they've lost that war, they lost that battle purely because they did not fulfill the command of the Prophet ﷺ, and they did not realize that this was a vulnerability and a weakness, and as a result they were overcome and overpowered by those people. And many Sahaba Ikram, they were martyred as a result of this one weakness. And if you look at it on a global scale as well, that Muslims from rich countries, whether you have oil, whether you have gas, whether you have resources available to you, due to a particular weakness of wealth, weakness of women, weakness of any of your desires, other people will use that weakness over you and against you, and they will exploit all of your resources. And this is exactly what's happening. Where are our Muslim countries now when they need to be defending our Muslims and speaking up? They're absolutely silent. We are shouting, we are protesting, we are doing so much here in this country. And our own countries betting tough because they have realized what their weakness was, and they have overcome them with their weakness. And now they control them due to their weaknesses. So don't allow your weaknesses to be exploited. Strengthen yourself, find out what your weaknesses are, and make sure that they do not exploit your weaknesses, whatever those weaknesses may be, social, financial, economic, whatever they may be, and especially religious as well. And look at what happened, that many Sahaba Ikram, great Sahaba Ikram who were martyred at this instant. Why? Because of that weakness. And the weaknesses that we have had over the last decade and century, as a result of that, hundreds and thousands, if not millions of Muslims have been killed. Why? Due to our weaknesses. Our weaknesses of this dunya, our weaknesses of the wealth, being quiet when somebody gives you money, being quiet when somebody gives you something else. These are the weaknesses, and this is what they're exploiting, so make sure you strengthen yourself. Abu Dujana, he was killed, he was a great Sahabi of the Prophet ﷺ. So now, if you just recap back to the situation where the Muslims are being fought from the front, and they're being attacked from behind, and the strategic position on the mountain has been overcome as well. So on the mountain, the arrows are being shot at them. From behind, they're being attacked and killed. From in front, they're being attacked and killed as well, and they can't go anywhere. Some Sahaba Ikram, they have run away. 300 hypocrites already had left the Muslims, so there's only 700. Many people have been killed, and the Prophet ﷺ is at this critical situation situation where there's only 10 people left. Imagine this. Due to that one weakness, look at the ramifications, look at the consequences of that one weakness and the effect that it had. So, brothers and sisters, I urge you again and again, don't overlook this thing that it was just a strategic position, and that it was much more than that, much greater than that, and you need to realize this as well. Just that one weakness, and look at the effect of that. That one weakness of rich countries today, and look at what's happening in the rest of the Middle East and the rest of the states throughout the world because of their one weakness. So don't allow your weaknesses to be exploited. So Abu Dujana, there's 10 people, just 10 Sahaba Ikram defending the Prophet ﷺ in front of these hundreds and hundreds of non-Muslims. Abu Dujana, there's so many arrows were shot at him, and he was protecting the Prophet ﷺ. He was covering him like a mother would cover her child. He was covering the Prophet ﷺ, embracing him so much that there were so many arrows that were shot at him. But the Sahaba Ikram, they described him that when he passed away, he had so many arrows inside him and on his body that he looked like a hedgehog. And you know how many spikes and how many things the hedgehog has in terms of spikes coming out. This is how his back looked, because it was only him and 9 other Sahaba Ikram who were there defending the Prophet ﷺ, and he passed away as well. Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas, he was a talented archer at that time, and he was trying his best to protect the Prophet ﷺ, and they would be attacking Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas, and they threw spears at him, and every time he would raise his right hand, and he had a spear in his right hand, raise his left hand, and he was attacking his left hand as well. He would be, attacked at every single point. Why? Because he was protecting the Prophet ﷺ. Talha ibn Ubaydillah as well, he would tell the Prophet ﷺ to lower his head, and he would cover the Prophet ﷺ as well. His hand became paralyzed, he was martyred as well. They were protecting the Prophet ﷺ, and how much could they do? These 10 people, if those people, those 40 people, those 50 people remained where they were, the Muslims would not have been in that position. So, and then Yazid ibn Sa'ban, he as well, he gave his life in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala solely because he was protecting the Prophet ﷺ as well. Abdullah ibn Jahsh, he was also protecting the Prophet ﷺ as well, and he was martyred in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sa'ad ibn Abi Rabi as well, he was protecting the Prophet ﷺ, and he was also carrying the flag of Islam as well. They cut off his right hand, then he was still carrying with his left hand. They cut off his left hand, and he was carrying it on his chest. And then they finally killed him as well, and then he fell to the ground because he was protecting the Prophet ﷺ as well. Hamza, the great uncle of the Prophet ﷺ, he was also mutilated and he was killed and martyred in this battle as well. So just look at these great Sahaba Ikram, these close people, relative of the Prophet ﷺ. Remember the dream the Prophet had? That the shield, will protect you. And then your sword was broken, and the cows were being slaughtered. And the interpretation was the shield was Medina, and this is the fortress that the Muslims need to make sure that they stay behind. And the sword that was broken was his near relatives would be martyred. And the cows that were slaughtered were the Sahaba Ikram. So this is exactly happening. And the Muslims, they should have prevented this from happening had they made sure that their weakness was not exploited, but they didn't. So whenever you run away from a situation, from the position that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed you in, then you are making Islam more and more weak. So whatever position that you may be in your media, at the council, in your business, as a CEO, as a manager, whatever position that you are in, remember it's much more than just the dunyawi position, it's also the religious position as well, and you need to protect Islam just the way the Sahaba Ikram tried to do as well. So Sayyidina Hamza, may Allah be pleased with him, he was killed at that time by, his name was Wahshi, and he was a slave of Abu Sufyan. Remember Abu Sufyan, he hated the Prophet ﷺ, and he hated Sayyidina Hamza for obviously accepting Islam as well. And Wahshi, what he did is that he went and he attacked Sayyidina Hamza and he killed him. And he put a spear through him and then he killed him. After he actually doing that, what he did is that Hind, who was the wife of Abu Sufyan, she came and she tore open the chest and the stomach of Sayyidina Hamza, and she took out his liver and she started biting and chewing the liver of Sayyidina Hamza, the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ. And when the Prophet ﷺ heard about this, realized that Sayyidina Hamza was martyred, he cried and cried and cried, just the way that he cried at the loss of Sayyidina Khadija and the loss of his uncle as well. He had lost another great uncle, another great protector of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is where the actual place that he died, this is where Sayyidina Hamza was actually buried. But 40 years after the Prophet ﷺ, there was a flood in this very area where Sayyidina Hamza was actually buried. And due to the floods, what the leader of that time of Medina, I don't exactly remember his name, but when he decided to relocate the grave of Sayyidina Hamza to another particular position, which is where it actually is today. So when they moved the body of Sayyidina Hamza, it actually mentioned, this is written in the books of history, that Sayyidina Hamza's wounds were very, very fresh, exactly the way that he had just passed away. His clothes were exactly the same, his face was exactly the same. Because these are the people who had seen Sayyidina Hamza during their lifetime. So after 40 years, his flesh was there, his body was there, his clothes were there, the blood was still there, and it was wet. And this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to remind us and teach us that when you give your life in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, don't think those people are dead. Don't think or assume that these people have no existence anymore, but they are rather alive, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is protecting them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is providing for them in His particular way and form. But why do all of these things happen? Why do all of these things happen? Purely because of the neglect and purely because of the disobedience that those Sahaba Ikram had of the order of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the Prophet alayhi wasallam, he was obviously very, very upset with the loss of the Muslim, but also especially to the loss of his own uncle and to the loss of his family members as well. So the Prophet ﷺ, at this time he realizes that the Muslims have been overcome, and then they retrace their steps and they try to find a shelter. And the Quraysh at that time, they realize that they have caused a huge amount of damage, and they assume wrongfully that the Prophet ﷺ has been killed, and therefore they think, okay, our job is done and we no longer need to do anything else, and so therefore they leave the plains of the battlefield as well. So the question is, one question the President could ask is that yesterday when we talked about the Battle of Badr, we realized how the Prophet ﷺ prepared for every single situation and scenario, and then towards the end, because not many scholars will tell you this, they will say Allah Ta'ala sent the angels, the Rizal came down, and the angels killed the non-Muslims at that time. That is something which is absolutely certain. It comes in the Quran, but what they fail to remind you is that those angels came only towards the end of the battle. The end of the battle, because up until that time, the Muslims had to show their firmness, they had to show their bravery and their courage, and that's when the angels came right at the end to further support them and to keep them steadfast. So why did the angels not come down now? It's a question. Think about it. There was 1,000 people then versus 313. Today there's 3,000 people versus only 700 Muslims. Majority of Muslims have fled. Other people have been killed. Prophet is then just on his own with 10 people around him. This is the time for Allah Ta'ala to send the angels. This is the time for Allah Ta'ala to send Jibreel alayhi salam and to protect the Muslims and to protect the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. However, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually wants you to do is teach us a very, very important lesson, and that is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant you success, but it's a conditional success, and that conditional success is when you obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and when you obey the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why is it that throughout the world now that the Muslims are failing, the Muslims are falling, the Muslims are being slaughtered? Because we have left the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have left the obedience of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Had the Sahaba remained obedient to the command and the hukm of the Prophet alaihi wasallam, then this situation would not have transpired. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to teach them a lesson that when you disobey me, and by disobeying the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you are disobeying me as well. Remember, Allah Ta'ala combines his obedience with the obedience of the Prophet alaihi wasallam. So when you disobey me and you disobey the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then you will not succeed, then you will fail. And this was the lesson that Muslims had to learn. And this is what we are not learning even today. That we want success, we want saving, we want salvation, we want all of these things, but we have to ask ourselves, how obedient are you to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How much of the halal you do? How much of the haram you perpetrate all the time? How obedient are you to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Every time that your obedience will be in concordance to the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to the obedience of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you will never fail. But as soon as you slip, as soon as you walk away, even from the slightest iota away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and away from the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then you will not succeed, even though you may have planned, even though you may have firm faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but that is not enough. obedience in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is important as well. So I urge you all, brothers and sisters, that if you want to succeed, if you want Islam to succeed, if you want Islam to flourish, if you want Islam to become successful again, you need to become obedient to Allah and to the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Another vital lesson that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to teach the Muslims as well, which is, we know this verse at this time as well, تِلْكَ الْأَيَّامُ نُدَاوِلُهَا بَيْنَ النَّاسِ, that these are the days that we change between people. Some days you are successful, other days you will be unsuccessful. So these, your heart, your state will never remain the same. Just because you are successful today doesn't mean you're going to be successful for the rest of your life. And just because you are poor today doesn't mean you're going to be poor for the rest of your life. This is the lesson that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us, that the days, the hal, the state, the situation of people will constantly change. They will fluctuate from the highs and from the lows. Whilst the Muslims were successful in the previous year, they were unsuccessful in this year. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is showing that we have to constantly strive. And this is what's happened with us as a community, as a nation. We become decadent. We've stopped. There's a moratorium on everything that we do. We don't do anything anymore. We just think that because we're going to succeed, in order for you to succeed, you have to constantly strive. Constantly strive. The way the Sahaba were striving with innovative ideas and innovative ways of doing certain things in certain ways to succeed. Similarly, if you want to succeed, you can't just design something and based on that design and success of that design, sit on your throne for the rest of your life and say that's it. Even today, Microsoft is failing. Why? Because they thought they had the greatest product of all of mankind, and then they thought that's it. They can do. They can just sit down and not be innovative anymore. But now you see their decline as well. You see the decline of iPhone as well, because people are saying, "Wait a minute, you're not innovative anymore." So don't just bank on one thing that you've done and you become successful, and that's it. You have to constantly strive and be creative, and this is the lesson of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are those days that we change amongst the people. Some days you will be high, other days you will be low. Some days you will succeed, other times you will not succeed. What matters is that you strive towards that success. And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was teaching, as well as the most important one as well, of obedience. When you leave the obedience of Allah, you will not succeed. When you leave the obedience of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you will not succeed as well. So this is why the reason why angels ever came, because this is when they should have come. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to teach that vital lesson as well. Prophet ﷺ was injured, the Sahaba were injured, many were martyred, and the family of the Prophet ﷺ was martyred as well, purely based on this one reason, because they rejected the obedience of Allah, rejected the obedience of the Prophet ﷺ, and allowed the desire of the dunya, the spoils of war to come into their heart and think that's it, Sarakam, again, we've done our job. No, your job is not done until you are back in the court of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Remember the quote that I mentioned to you of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. He said, somebody asked him, when do you get to rest? When do you get to rest? And he said, the only time that you get to rest is when your first foot is inside the gardens of paradise. When you are inside the gardens of paradise, that is the time for you to rest. Before that, you have to constantly strive. You have to constantly work. You have to constantly struggle, because there is no stopping. There is no, retiring or anything like that. You have to constantly strive to get closer and closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I urge our brothers and sisters who think they've done their 5 daily namazah, they've done their hajj, they've done their umrah, they've paid the zakat, that's it, sadaqah, money, we've checked our to-do list, and that's it. No, constantly strive. Strive, just the way you strive at your workplaces to get a promotion, to get better, to have a higher status, higher position. You're constantly striving to have a better house, better property, more wealth. You have to constantly strive in your deen as well as your dunya, and that is when you will have the success of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And similarly, you have to constantly strive to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in terms of your obedience, and closer to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam with obedience as well. Today we have rejected the sunnah. Before we have forsaken the sunnah, and we do what our desires want us to do. And as a result of that, we are not succeeding, and we will not succeed. We will succeed when we go back to the sunnah and go back to the Quran, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant us that success. Inshallah, tomorrow we'll continue with as the Muslims return from Uhud, and then the situation that transpires in Medina.